Okay, we are at quest 3. This is the final required quest of the semester. Because it is at the end of the semester, I want you to think of this quest as beginning to pull together all of the various threads that we have started so far this semester. And I want you to approach the levels of this as a little bit of review of what we have previously covered and building on what we have previously covered. At the end of this quest, you are going to have to answer the question, how much does a person's cultural identity affect the way they see the rest of the world? So yes, we are going to continue to talk about culture, and you are going to continue to hate it. But this is all in service of answering this question. Like, do you see the world a particular way because of who you are as, an individual, or is it because of the culture that you identify with? Do you see the world the way you are because, or the way you do because of your genetics? Is it nature, or do you see the world the way that you do because of nurture, the way that you were brought up? I mean, these are, to an extent, these are deep philosophical questions, but they're also very practical questions to consider when you've been thinking all semester about culture. Level 1 is called Culture Defended, and in particular we're talking about Native American culture. We have 5 different Native American authors talking about parts of their culture that they need to defend from the either explicitly white people who are trying to take it away, or white people who think they're being kind but end up taking it away, or white people who have historically done the damage so that now a part of their culture is slipping. Anyway, there's a persuasive letter, there's an essay, there's a short story, there's a poem, and there's a TED Talk. So you're going to look at how those authors are defending their culture, in particular through the use of metaphor, because one thing that all of those genres have in common is the ability to create an analogy or create a metaphor. At the end of the level, you will evaluate one more defense of Native culture. There's a song by a woman named Buffy St. Marie, where she tries to save the name of Wounded Knee after that has been in many ways appropriated by a white man. There's an optional level, 1A, where you go back to quest number 1, to the subculture that you wrote about. You might remember me in a brony main. And you are going to use one of those, a letter, a TED Talk, a poem, a short story, an essay, we could throw in song. One of those creative means of defending that particular subculture. Level 2 is about families. It's called Families Fractured, nice alliterative phrase there. You may be familiar in your own life with parts of families that don't get along with other parts of families. But in particular, we're looking at 3 texts here: 1 fiction, a short story, 2 nonfiction, 1 essay, and 1 podcast. And all 3 of these look at pairs of sisters, where the sisters are not all that different in age, but they find themselves very far apart in cultural identity and sort of the clash that comes with that. And at the end of the level, you will be doing an analysis of the way the authors, even in the true stories, have used symbols to get at that cultural clash. Level 2A is an optional level where you have an opportunity to tell a true story or to make up a story, where you also have some sort of clash within a family that is represented somehow symbolically. Now, level 3 in this quest is one of the levels that is going to feel a lot like review, because we've already talked this semester about argument, and you talked last year about argument, and you talked the year before that about argument, and you've been hearing about writing argument all your life. But here in level 3, we're going to learn Bullock's 3 rules of argument, and we're going to look at how writers writing what they write on purpose are following those 3 rules very carefully, even when they don't know that they're following Bullock's 3 rules of argument. And then you have an opportunity to practice writing an argument, making sure, paying attention to my 3 rules. You can write about anything that you want, any argument that you want to make. Level 4 then is about a specific kind of argument, which is called a synthesis. We're going to watch a couple of fun videos. We're going to read an example of a synthesis. And if you have no idea what synthesis is, that's okay. It is covered in the levels. And at the end, you are going to write a synthesis where you are specifically thinking about families and cultural identity. And so the idea of a synthesis is that you're bringing many sources together in a particular kind of argument. And since level 3 was about argument and level 2 was about sisters who have conflicts in their cultural identity, pulling those things together into a synthesis for level 4 should be pretty easy. And here's the awesome thing. That synthesis that you write for level 4 could easily be part of your answer to the embedded assessment question in level 5. Things that you wrote back in Quest 2 about culture and about cultural identity and about people interact. I mean, the whole thing of Quest 2 was narratives of people expressing their cultural identity or living out their cultural identity. You can go back to Quest number 1 where you're talking about your own cultural identity. All of those pieces can be a part of what you do in level 5. You might remember previously I had talked about CPR, where you're copying, pasting, and rearranging things that you have already written. This moment here at the end of the semester is the perfect time to do that, because it really is, as I said, the culmination of everything that we have done. Now, I do want to take a look at the rubric for level 5. Because it is level 5, you will be turning in your binder, and I will be looking for vocabulary from throughout the quest. I'll be looking for graphic organizers, SIFT for literary text, SMEL or SOAPstone for informational text. I will be looking for questions in the Springboard book from some of the things that we are reading from Springboard. So a lot of these that just should be basic and automatic at this point in the semester. I'll just be checking for those to make sure those are done. That should be an easy way for you to score some proficiency and advanced on this level. But let's take a look at the writing standards, because argument and synthesis and planning are pretty big for this particular level, level 5. Scoring advanced on the argument standard means you're going to follow Bullock's 3 rules. Rule number 1, define your terms. So thinking about things like cultural identity and worldview, how would you define those? You're going to clearly state your claim about how much a person's cultural identity affects their worldview. And really, there are just 3 answers, and I can give you those 3 answers to choose from. You can say that cultural identity affects worldview significantly, quite a lot, somewhat, taking a middle position, or you can say not very much at all. So you're going to clearly state that somewhere in your argument. And my third rule is using only real evidence. I don't want a lot of hypotheticals. Well, if a person was like this, then this might happen. No, I don't want that. I am like this, so this thing happened. Or I read about this character and this happened. Or I read this true story, or I listened to this true story earlier in the semester, and this is what happened. Real evidence, people. And in addition, for an advanced, I'd like you to try to use some particular analogies. Here on the rubric it says, like those used by John Oliver. We're going to look at a clip from last week tonight by John Oliver in the synthesis level, but there have been analogies all through the semester. The metaphors and symbols that we talk about in this quest are kinds of analogies. You're comparing a thing to another thing. To score advanced on planning, editing, and revision, your writing has to be well informed by and even include specific ideas from your previous writing this semester. And your writing for this level should include references to 5 or more texts that we have done. Now, there is a list that is linked to from level 5 of all of the texts that you might possibly want to use, and it is if my math is right, about 85 different texts. So picking 5 that you remember and that you like enough that you can reference in this particular essay, I think should not be a problem for you. I want to see some evidence in your binder of planning, some work in the Springboard book towards planning this, maybe a graphic organizer or an outline towards planning this. And I want you to use a strong argument structure. I'm not requiring you to use any particular argument structure. We will re-examine the Springboard argument structure that we have already seen this semester that goes hook, claim, support, concession, and refutation, and then call to action. I think that is a great outline. It is not a 5-paragraph essay outline where you're sort of trapped into a box, but it is a very nice progression where you go from here's my idea, here's why it's my idea, here's what other people might say about why they're wrong, and finally, here's what we need to do about it. Like, that is a perfect argument outline, and I think if you want to use that, you should go ahead and use that. But as long as you're using some really strong logical structure, you can score advanced on this standard. And finally, for synthesis, you're going to follow my 2 rules for synthesis, which is that your ideas drive this writing and that you are bringing together multiple sources in each, because that's what a synthesis is. It's pulling together all the things that you have learned in order to make your point. So I want you to keep that in mind as you go through this quest. It is not about, oh crap, now I have to learn a whole bunch of new things. It's not about that at all. It's about, oh, this reminds me of this other thing that I've already learned. I can use pieces of this essay and this other essay. I can bring them all together into my final writing for this quest. This is an opportunity really for you to show off everything that you have learned this semester. You're going to set it up all nicely. You're going to polish it. You're going to turn it into me. And I'm going to be like, this is beautiful. You have done amazing work, young student. And then you're going to feel good about yourself. And I'm going to feel good about myself. And everybody's going to feel good. And then it's going to be Christmas. So good luck.